I found out my wife was cheating on me because she said she was going out with her best friend, but she was with me. I know what you must be thinking. Another cheating story just like so many others. But for me, this story is unique because it changed my life in a way I never thought possible. Before diving into what happened, I need to explain what my marriage to Clara was like and why. In my mind, what I was doing was justifiable while what she did was unforgivable. Clara and I met about 10 years ago at a mutual friend's party. She was everything I could ask for. Beautiful, intelligent, and above all, independent. She wasn't the type who needed constant attention, but when we were together, it was as if the rest of the world disappeared. She had this energy that made you want to be better just to be worthy of her. In the early years, our marriage was what many would call perfect. Clara was a partner in every sense. She supported my decisions, encouraged me at work, and whenever possible, made our life lighter. But over time, things started to change. It wasn't all at once, but the spark began to fade. What had once been a marriage full of passion and partnership slowly turned into a routine devoid of excitement. I, like any man, had my needs. Clara, however, seemed less and less interested. Always busy with work, friends, or her own hobbies, I started to feel neglected. I'm not saying this justifies what I did, but I want you to understand the context. It was in that void that Amanda stepped in. Amanda, Clara's best friend, was practically part of our family. She was there at birthdays, holidays, and even on trips. She had always been close to Clara, but over time, I noticed she seemed more interested in me than she should. At first, it was just innocent jokes, longer than usual conversations, and looks that I thought might mean something more. I resisted for a while. When I finally gave in, it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Amanda made me feel desired again. She was young, fun, and full of energy. And honestly, I believed I was just fulfilling my masculine needs. In my mind, I wasn't truly cheating on Clara because I still loved her. It was purely physical, something I thought men needed, and something she would never understand. But I was certain Clara would never do something like that. She had always been so ethical, so proper. I believed that as long as I kept things under control, no one would get hurt. But I underestimated people's ability to keep secrets. That afternoon in particular, Clara called me while she was at work. I was in a hotel with Amanda at that exact moment, enjoying our time together. When I saw Clara's name on my phone, I motioned for Amanda to stay quiet and picked up. "Hey, love," Clara said cheerfully. "I just wanted to let you know that I'm meeting up with Amanda after work today. We need to catch up on some things, you know? So don't wait for me for dinner." Amanda, who was lying next to me, nearly choked on her laugh. I covered the phone's microphone with my hand and gave her a look of disbelief and irritation. She just shrugged, clearly amused by the situation. "Sure, no problem," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Enjoy your time with Amanda." "Thanks, love. I love you," Clara said before hanging up. I stared at my phone for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Amanda didn't seem surprised at all, which irritated me further. "Did you know she was going to use you as an excuse?" I asked, still trying to control my anger. "I had no idea," Amanda replied, but there was something in her tone that made me suspicious. "But it's funny, isn't it? You do this all the time. Clara's just learning how to play the same game." Those words hit me like a punch. I knew Amanda was right, but my pride wouldn't let me admit it. I got up and started getting dressed. I needed answers. If Clara wasn't with Amanda, then where was she? And with whom? "What are you going to do?" Amanda asked as she watched me put on my shirt. "I'm going to find out what's going on," I replied flatly. I grabbed my things and left the hotel room, ignoring Amanda's protests. In my mind, I knew Clara had crossed a line. It was one thing for me to do what I did because I was still the provider, the dedicated husband. But her? She had no right to do this to me. When I got home, my mind was racing. I needed to figure out how to confront Clara without revealing too much of what I already knew. I decided to wait for her to come back, and in the meantime, I started going through our messages and shared accounts for clues. That's when I found something that made my blood run cold. A dinner reservation in her name for that very night. And it wasn't just any restaurant. It was a place Clara knew I hated, which made it even more obvious she wasn't planning to invite me. The question now was, who was she going with? I sat there, my hands trembling and my heart pounding as I tried to process everything I had just discovered. I couldn't believe what I had seen at that restaurant. Clara, my wife, the woman I had built a life with, was sitting with another man, laughing and acting in a way that left no doubt. Every gesture, every look, every smile confirmed what I already feared. Driving home in silence, my mind was in turmoil. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to confront her right then and there, but I knew it wasn't the right time. I needed to keep a cool head, to be strategic. If there was one thing I had learned from my own indiscretions, it was that the truth rarely came out in chaos. I had to be patient. I had to understand everything before making a move. When I got home, the darkness and silence of the house hit me like a reminder of my loneliness. I sat on the couch, unable to move, trying to process what had just happened. I knew Clara would be home late, so I had time to think. But my mind kept returning to that image. Her, with him, laughing in a way I hadn't seen her laugh with me in years. Who was that man? I recognized him. Not up close, but enough to know he was someone from her work. Clara had mentioned his name a few times in passing, always casually. Daniel is leading the new project, or Daniel suggested this spot for the meeting. I had never thought of him as a threat, but now everything clicked. The late work nights, the last-minute meetings, the networking events. It was him. It had always been him. I decided to investigate. I couldn't rely on what I had just seen. I pulled out my phone and started searching social media. It didn't take long to find his profile. Daniel Martinez. His profile picture showed a confident man, smiling, with the air of someone who knew exactly what he wanted and how to get it. I scrolled through his posts, his comments, trying to find something that would confirm what I already knew deep down. And there it was. Photos from work events, posts with colleagues, and in several of them, there was Clara. In one, they were sitting next to each other, their bodies leaning in a way that seemed far too intimate. In another, they were at what appeared to be a team dinner, and Clara had that same smile I had seen at the restaurant. A smile that hadn't been for me in a long time. My chest filled with rage, but also something else, a deep sense of humiliation. How had it come to this? How had I let things fall apart so completely? I had always thought that, while I had my moments, Clara was above all that. But now I saw she wasn't. She had secrets too, and the worst part was that she had been so good at hiding them that I hadn't noticed until now. As I scrolled further, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Clara. Love, the night's running a little long. I might be later than I expected. Don't wait up. Love you. I read those words and let out a bitter laugh. The audacity, the ease with which she lied to me, was almost admirable. I took a deep breath and replied something brief, trying not to reveal anything I was feeling. That's fine, love. Enjoy your night. I turned off my phone and closed my eyes, trying to calm myself. I needed a plan. I couldn't just confront her without more proof. I needed to be sure to know every detail. If I was going to face her, I wanted her to have no way out, no chance to deny it. And most of all, I wanted her to feel what I was feeling at that moment. Hours passed, and finally, I heard the sound of the key in the door. Clara walked in, looking tired but content, as if she'd had a perfect evening. She looked at me and smiled. "Hi, love," she said as she placed her bag on the table. The night was amazing. Amanda says hi. I looked at her, trying to keep my expression neutral. Every word she said was like a knife, but I smiled back and nodded. "Glad you had fun," I replied, my voice as calm as I could manage. She walked over and gave me a kiss on the cheek before heading upstairs. I stayed on the couch, staring into the void. As much as I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, I knew it wasn't the right time. Not yet. That night, I didn't sleep. My mind kept working, connecting the dots, remembering all the times Clara had come home late, all the excuses I had accepted without question. The rage inside me grew, but so did something else, determination. I was going to find out everything, every lie, every detail, every moment she had hidden from me. And when I was ready, Clara would know exactly what I knew. For now, I would play the role of the clueless husband, as if nothing had changed. But inside, something was already broken, something that could never be repaired. This wasn't over. Not for me, and not for her. And deep down, Clara had no idea what was coming. That sleepless night, my mind was in turmoil. The weight of what I had discovered about Clara consumed me, but I knew I needed to vent. Amanda seemed like the only person who could listen to me at that moment. Despite all the confusion, she was the only one who truly knew what was happening, even if only partially. The next afternoon, I sent Amanda a message. "I need to see you. It's urgent." She replied almost immediately. "The usual hotel?" I knew she thought it would just be another one of our meetings, but for me, it was more than that. I needed answers. When I arrived at the hotel, Amanda was already there, waiting for me with that confident smile she always had. She looked stunning, as always, but my mind was elsewhere, caught in thoughts about Clara. "You look tense," Amanda said as she stood to greet me. "I am," I replied, my voice dry. "A lot is going on. Amanda raised an eyebrow and smiled provocatively, stepping closer. Maybe I can help you relax, she said with a suggestive tone. I held her by the shoulders, stopping her from going further. She looked surprised, but I knew I needed to clear things up before doing anything else. Clara is cheating on me, I said bluntly. Amanda stepped back, her surprise turning into a mix of disbelief and irony. You've got to be kidding me, right? She asked, letting out a slight laugh. I saw it with my own eyes. I continued, ignoring her tone. She was at a restaurant with a coworker. They were holding hands, laughing, as if nothing else in the world mattered. Amanda looked at me for a moment and then laughed sarcastically. Lucas, do you hear yourself? You're literally here with me, cheating on your wife, and you're mad because she did the same? It's different, I retorted firmly. I'm a man. I have needs. This means nothing to me. But her? She was supposed to be faithful. She destroyed our marriage. Amanda laughed again, but this time she seemed unwilling to argue. Lucas, you're a lost cause. But you know what? I won't argue. If you need to unload your frustration, I'm here. She stepped forward and pulled me close, kissing me. For a moment, I hesitated, but soon I gave in. There was no point resisting. Amanda knew exactly what to say and do to make me forget, at least temporarily, what was happening. The tension of the moment quickly disappeared, and we gave in to each other as we had so many times before. For a while, the world was silent, and Clara and everything she had done seemed like a distant problem. But when it was over, I knew it wasn't enough. It didn't solve anything. I needed to act. As Amanda lay back on the bed, smoking a cigarette and smiling contentedly, I got up and started getting dressed. You're still going after her, aren't you? Amanda asked, her tone a mix of curiosity and disdain. I am, I replied without hesitation. She needs to know that I know, and she needs to understand that there's no turning back. Amanda didn't respond, just shook her head as if she already expected that answer. When I left the hotel, my decision was made. The next day, I took the photos I had of Clara and Daniel at the restaurant and went to her office. I wasn't nervous anymore. I was determined. Clara needed to feel the humiliation I had felt. I arrived at the building around noon. I passed through reception without difficulty and went up to her floor. When I entered, she was in a meeting with a few people. I knocked hard on the door, interrupting the conversation. All eyes turned to me, including hers. Lucas, what are you doing here? She asked, surprised and clearly uncomfortable. We need to talk. Now, I said firmly. She hesitated but stood up, probably realizing I wouldn't leave without speaking to her. She followed me to a more secluded corner, away from the curious eyes. What's going on? She asked, trying to stay calm. Without saying anything, I took the photos out of the folder and placed them on the table between us. She looked at them, and I saw her expression change. First came surprise, then guilt. Do you want to explain this to me? I asked, my voice low but full of anger. Lucas, I can explain. I don't want explanations. I cut her off. You destroyed our marriage, Clara. Lies, betrayals. And for what? I gave you everything. Everything. She tried to speak, but I didn't let her. I respected you, Clara. And this is how you repay me? With Daniel? A coworker? You two laughing at me while I was at home. Working to maintain this pathetic life you clearly don't value. I continued, my voice filled with anger and resentment. While I was working hard, while I was doing everything for us, you were laughing with him, lying to me, destroying everything we built together. Clara was visibly shaken. Her hands trembled as she looked at the photos I had placed on the table. Her eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. There were no excuses, no attempts to deny it. Just the silence of someone who knew they were completely exposed. Is this what you wanted, Clara? I went on, my voice growing firmer. Did you want to throw away everything we had for some random guy from work? What does he give you that I don't? Fun? Attention? What, Clara? Lucas, please, she finally managed to say, her voice weak and trembling. Please what? I retorted, cutting her off. You had the chance to be honest, Clara. You could have talked to me, told me something was wrong. But no, you chose this. You chose to lie, to cheat, to destroy. Clara started crying, covering her face with her hands. The sound of her sobs seemed to echo in the isolated corner of the office, but I felt no empathy. I was consumed by a mix of anger and satisfaction at seeing her finally face the consequences of her actions. I don't want to hear excuses, Clara, I continued, my voice now colder. I've already made my decision. I'm filing for divorce. And I hope you and your Daniel are very happy together because you've ruined everything we had. She tried to say something, but her words were barely audible between her sobs. I didn't wait to listen. I grabbed my things and walked out, leaving her there, broken and alone. As I passed through the common area of the office, Clara's colleagues looked on curiously, probably trying to figure out what was happening. I didn't care. Clara deserved every bit of that humiliation. I went home with a sense of relief, as if I had finally shed a weight that had been crushing me. But at the same time, there was an emptiness. Even with all my anger, even knowing I was right to confront her, there was no complete satisfaction. Something in me knew the situation was more complicated than I wanted to admit. Later that night, Amanda texted me, "Can we meet tomorrow? We need to talk." I agreed. I knew she had probably already heard about the confrontation with Clara. Their worlds were too intertwined for something like this to go unnoticed. The next day, I met Amanda at the same hotel as always. She seemed tense, unlike her usual self. She sat on the edge of the bed, crossing her arms, as if preparing for something difficult. Clara came to see me, she said, getting straight to the point. My expression hardened. What did she say? "She's devastated, Lucas," Amanda replied, her voice softer than I expected. She told me what happened at work, about the photos, about the divorce. "She doesn't know I'm involved with you, of course, but she's completely broken." I rolled my eyes, unable to stop myself. "She destroyed our marriage, Amanda. She deserved this. What else did you expect me to do? Stay silent and let her keep laughing behind my back?" Amanda sighed, as if battling something within herself. Finally, she spoke. "I'm not going to argue whether she deserved it or not, but Clara is my best friend, Lucas. She came to me to vent, and I felt horrible because I know I'm betraying her too. This isn't right." My anger began to rise again. "Amanda, I've already told you, this is different. Clara chose to cheat. She lied to me. We both know this has nothing to do with what's happening between us." "Lucas," Amanda said, interrupting me. "I'm not saying she's right, but I can't continue this right now. Not while Clara is suffering so much. I need some time." "Time?" I repeated, incredulous. "Amanda, are you seriously ending this because of her? After everything she did?" "Yes," Amanda replied firmly. "Because in the end, Clara is my friend. And even if she was wrong, I'm wrong too. We both are." I stayed silent, trying to absorb her words. Part of me wanted to argue, to convince her that what we had was different, that Clara was the real culprit. But deep down, I knew Amanda had made up her mind. "Fine," I finally said, standing up. "If that's what you want, so be it. But no, this doesn't change anything. Clara ruined the marriage, not me. I don't regret what I did." Amanda didn't respond, just looked at me with a mix of sadness and resignation. I left the hotel, once again alone, but now with the feeling that something else had broken. As I walked down the street, one thing was clear. I was right. Clara had crossed a line that could never be undone. And even if Amanda had decided to step away, I knew that deep down, everything that had happened was Clara's fault. At least, that's what I told myself. I found out that my perfect wife has a Camilo. Then my parents admit that I was in an arranged marriage, and I was the only one who didn't realize it. I noticed on social media that there are always likes from a teenage girl on posts that she puts up about me. I thought it was a bit weird that she was friends with a teenager, so I looked through the photos I could see on her profile. There are a few with my wife from about 8 to 10 years ago, and another man. When I asked my wife, she said she was her ex-boyfriend's daughter. She explained that they were very serious, but that he had ended up getting married to someone else. This seemed odd, so I asked my father-in-law about him. The next time I saw him, my father-in-law rolled his eyes and said, "Don't mention Camilo. I am so glad you came along, because that guy was bad for her. He was unemployed, a single father, and just very trashy. We never would have accepted him. I am very successful career-wise and well-established. My family is very prominent and well-regarded in the community." The more I thought about it, the more it felt like my background had more to do with things than anything. I asked my wife about Camilo again and asked if she would have married him if not for her family. She said that one of the biggest reasons he chose someone else was because her family refused to accept him. When I asked what was different about me, she responded, "He was Camilo and you're Charles." I asked if that meant she would marry him if anything happened to me. She shook her head, laughed, and said I was being ridiculous and that she didn't think like that. I told her I wanted her to remove and block her ex and his daughter from her social media immediately and to stop communicating with them. She's told me she has a cordial relationship with both of them and doesn't feel it's fair of me to ask her to cut them out. I'm losing sleep over the fact that I feel like a placeholder who is there to please her family, and that she'll go back to him once her parents are gone. I'm starting to doubt every interaction I ever had with her. When I bring it up to her, she gets upset and tells me to stop dwelling on her past. I wish I'd never known this because I feel like my happiness has been drained. So I sat down with my wife and told her that this whole Camilo thing was bothering me, that I'd never heard his name before for someone she held in such high regard. She explained that he had cheated on her and had married the woman he cheated with. They stopped speaking for a while, but they started being cordial again as he was having problems in his marriage and through his divorce. She swears on her life that there's only friendship there, that she can't ever forgive him, and that she has no interest in him romantically anymore. I was over at my parents' house telling my father about Camilo. He kept telling me not to worry, that everyone has a past, and that she chose me. Mom overheard Dad and me and came into the kitchen. Are you serious right now? Is she talking to Camilo again? After that exhausting conversation with my wife, I was shattered. Every night, thoughts of Camilo crept back into my mind like a ghost haunting my marriage. She kept saying I was being ridiculous, but something inside me screamed that I wasn't. It wasn't baseless jealousy. It was an intuition that there was more between her and that man than she was letting on. The fact that she kept this cordial relationship with him only made things worse. One day, I came home from work earlier than usual. My wife wasn't home. As I walked into the living room, I saw her phone charging on the table. I had an impulse, a temptation I had always resisted because I believed in mutual trust in a relationship. But at that moment, I couldn't hold back. I picked up the phone and started scrolling through her messages. Right away, I found a conversation with Camilo. She had deleted most of the old messages, but a few recent ones were still there. They were talking about mundane things like his job and his daughter, the teenager who had been liking her posts. But what chilled my blood was a message where she said, "Sometimes I miss how simple things were with you." Simple? What did she mean by simple? Here I was killing myself to keep our life stable and financially secure, and she missed a time when things were simple. I kept scrolling through the conversation, and although there weren't obvious flirtations, the closeness between them made me nauseous. The messages were far more frequent than she had let on. She was talking to him during the day, at times when I was at work, times when she should have been focused on us, on our plans. That night, I confronted her again. I showed her the messages and, with a calmness I didn't know I had, asked, "Do you miss him?" She turned red immediately, but kept her composure. "You invaded my privacy. I can't believe you went through my messages." "Answer the question." My voice rose, breaking the heavy silence in the room. "Do you miss him? Do you think about how your life would have been with him?" She hesitated. She said nothing for a few seconds, and that was all I needed to confirm what I already feared. Finally, she replied, "I miss some things, yes, but that doesn't mean I want him back." That was the knife in the heart. I had been here, giving everything to this marriage, while she had a part of her heart reserved for this man. I stood up, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the anger boiling inside me. If you miss anything about him, then why the hell are you with me? Why are you in this house, living this life that I've been providing for us? She started crying, something that usually made me soften, but this time, I couldn't. Not after everything. I married you because I love you, Charles. But life with him was different. He made me feel alive in a way that I can't explain. I laughed bitterly. "So that's it? You were expecting me to be the perfect guy for your family, while he was the one who made you feel alive? You're telling me that I'm the convenient husband, while he's the man you truly wanted." She said nothing, just cried more. I went to the bedroom and started packing my things. I decided I needed to get out of there for a while, to clear my head. I could barely breathe in that house. As I packed, she came into the room, trying to stop me. "Charles, please don't go. We can work this out. I'm not saying I want to be with him. You're the one I chose." I turned to her, my gaze hard. "You may have chosen to marry me, but deep down, you never really chose me. You were just following your family's expectations. If they had accepted Camilo, you wouldn't even be here now." She was speechless. What I said hit the mark, and I knew it was the truth. I grabbed my bag and walked out, ignoring her pleas for me to stay. That night, I stayed at my parents' house. I told them everything that had happened, and to my surprise, my mother was the first to back me up. I always thought she had a soft spot for that Camilo, but I didn't want to worry you. If she's still talking to him, that's not a good sign. My father, on the other hand, tried to downplay the situation. Everyone has a past, son. What matters is what you build together. Don't let a ghost destroy what you have now. But I couldn't see our marriage the same way anymore. I spent the next few days away, thinking about what to do. My wife tried to call me multiple times, but I needed space. After a week, I decided to go back to get the rest of my things and have one final conversation. When I arrived home, I found something that made me lose the ground beneath me. There was a new message from Camilo on her phone, sent that very morning, saying, "I know things are complicated, but I'm here if you need anything. If you ever want to talk in person, you know where to find me." That was the last straw. I went straight to a lawyer's office and started planning my way out of that marriage. She might have chosen to marry me, but I wasn't going to be the second option in anyone's life. I was determined to take back control of my life and build something real for myself, with or without her. The divorce process was quick, without major disputes. Maybe my ex-wife felt the weight of guilt, or perhaps she didn't want to prolong the inevitable. I signed the papers and for the first time in years felt like I had regained control of my life. The hurt was still there, but knowing that I wouldn't be living in the shadow of Camilo anymore gave me the strength to move on. At first, I tried not to think about how things were going for her. After all, she had emotionally betrayed me for years, keeping Camilo around like a backup plan. Deep down, I expected her to finally throw herself into his arms since the barrier of marriage was no longer there. But surprisingly, things didn't turn out the way she expected. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, I heard from mutual friends that she was trying to get closer to Camilo again. It was almost predictable. She had kept him in her life, even if just cordially, and now that she was single, it was as if she could finally live out the romance her family had stopped years ago. She was ready to start over with him, probably even thinking they were destined to be together. But what she didn't expect was Camilo's true nature. Camilo had seemed like married women. The thrill for him wasn't in building something real, but in being the man on the sidelines, the one who brought excitement to an already stable life. What my ex didn't understand was that his attraction lay in the forbidden tension, the adventure of being involved with women who were already committed. Now that she was free, he wasn't interested anymore. When she reached out to him, maybe expecting that he would welcome her with open arms, his reaction was cold, almost indifferent. He rejected her outright. Camilo made it clear that he wasn't interested in a serious relationship. He had spent years playing with her emotions, but the magic disappeared the moment the forbidden was no longer in play. For him, the fun was over the second she became a viable, available option. He liked the danger, the adrenaline of flirting with the unattainable, and now, without her marriage as a barrier, the excitement faded away. Of course, she was devastated. After leaving me, thinking she could finally have the great love story she wanted, she discovered the hard way that Camilo had never wanted anything real with her. He only liked the idea of being the other man, the one in the shadows, the one who was part of the fantasy of a forbidden life. When reality hit, he lost all interest. I found out about this through a mutual friend of ours, someone who also thought her relationship with Camilo had been toxic from the start. She went after him, my friend told me. She thought she could finally be with Camilo now that you're divorced. But the guy doesn't want anything to do with her. He dismissed her without even thinking twice. I didn't know how to feel about it. Part of me felt a bitter sense of satisfaction, like karma was finally catching up to her. But another part just felt pity. She had destroyed our marriage, thrown away a stable and happy life for a man who never truly wanted her. I learned that after Camilo's rejection, she tried to contact me again. Maybe in a last-ditch effort to recover what she had lost, but I had nothing left to offer. When she called me one night, crying and asking to talk, I simply said, "You made your choices. There's nothing left between us." In that moment, I felt the last piece of our relationship crumble. She had bet everything on an illusion, and she had lost. And as much as I still had scars, I knew I had made the right decision. She was no longer my responsibility, and her regret came too late. As the months went by, I rebuilt my life. I started going out more, reconnected with old friends, and little by little, the sadness gave way to renewal. I learned to live without the doubts and insecurities that Camillo's name had always brought me. She, on the other hand, was stuck in a past she could never get back. The man she had idealized had shown his true colors, and the future she had imagined with him crumbled into dust. In the end, it was a harsh lesson for her. Camillo wasn't the Prince Charming she thought would save her. He was just a man who enjoyed the fantasy of stealing what wasn't his, and once he had it, he lost all interest. She had bet everything on the wrong man, and by the time she realized it, it was far too late. After the divorce was finalized, it felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I won't lie. At first, the feeling of loneliness was overwhelming. But over time, I started to realize that being alone was so much better than living with distrust, doubts, and the constant ghost of Camillo haunting every conversation. Slowly, I began to rebuild my life, this time focusing on myself. I started going out more, got back into sports, and reconnected with friends who had distanced themselves during my marriage. It was during one of these outings that I met someone new, a remarkable woman named Sophia. At first, I wasn't rushing into anything, and that was the beauty of the situation. We weren't in a serious relationship, and that was exactly what I needed. Something light, respectful, and free from the emotional baggage and unresolved secrets that my past was filled with. Sophia and I would go out occasionally, have dinners, watch movies, and laugh a lot. She showed me a completely different perspective on life. There was no pressure, no emotional games, no unspoken expectations. Everything between us was clear, straightforward, and, most importantly, respectful. She knew about my divorce, and with all the patience in the world, let me move at my own pace. I was genuinely happy, even without being in a serious commitment. While I was moving forward with my life, I occasionally heard news about my ex-wife. Mutual friends mentioned that she wasn't doing well. After Camillo's rejection, it seemed like things began to unravel for her. She became obsessed with trying to reconnect with him, but, as expected, he wanted nothing to do with her. He completely distanced himself, and she was left alone, dealing with the fallout of her own choices. She was also facing financial struggles, as unlike when we were together. Now she had to manage life without the stability I had provided. I heard she went on a few dates with other guys, but nothing lasted. It seemed she was stuck in a cycle of frustration, trying to regain control of her life, but constantly failing. And honestly, I just didn't care. I didn't feel anger or a need for revenge. To be truthful, I didn't think about her much at all. It was like that chapter of my life belonged to another time, another person. She had made her choices, and now she was dealing with the consequences. Meanwhile, I had chosen to move on, and that brought me a peace I didn't think was possible. Sophia never pressured me about what we would be in the future, and I think that was the greatest gift she could have given me. What we had was real, honest, but without the need for labels or unrealistic expectations. She made me realize that it was possible to be with someone without the chains of a complicated past holding us back. Now, when I look back, I can see how my ex was deeply lost in her illusions. She bet everything on a fantasy, ignoring what really mattered, and lost it all. And while she struggled, trying to find some glimpse of happiness, I was experiencing something completely different: peace. Peace with myself, peace with my decisions, and peace with the future, whether it included Sophia or not. Life was better, much better.
I canceled my wedding after my mother-in-law tried to change the guest list. I'm a 29-year-old woman, and I've been with my Emil for 3 years. We got engaged 9 months ago. It was the perfect moment, just the two of us, at a quiet little spot where we had our first date. After that, we started planning a wedding that would match that vibe: small, personal, around 50 guests, close friends, and family. We didn't want anything flashy, just something that felt like us. Emil is pretty close to his parents, and they've always been a big part of his life. His mom, especially, has a strong personality, always getting involved in every family decision. I don't have that same kind of closeness with my family. Things have always been a bit strained between us, but we keep it civil. So it wasn't too surprising when Emil's mom wanted to get involved in our wedding planning. At first, it seemed like She just wanted to help. She offered to cover the cost of the venue, which we thought was generous. Weddings are expensive, so having one less thing to worry about was great. Or at least that's what we thought. Not long after she offered, Emil's mom started making little suggestions. She mentioned how it might be nice to invite a few of her business associates to the wedding, people we didn't even know. Emil and I brushed it off at first, thinking she was just trying to be helpful. We figured she'd drop it if we didn't make a big deal out of it. But then, without telling us, she went ahead and booked a different venue altogether. And not just any venue, a much fancier place than what we'd originally chosen. Our plan was for something cozy and laid back, but this new venue was all about grand halls, chandeliers, and marble floors. She told us she thought our first choice was too modest for such a special occasion. I felt like our plans were getting hijacked, but Emil just kept saying, "It's just how she is. She means well." I tried to let it go, hoping it would all smooth out. But then the guest list became an issue. Emil's mom sent over a list with about 30 extra names, most of which were people we had never met, her colleagues, old friends, even some clients. It wasn't just an extra seat or two. It was almost doubling our guest list. I brought it up to Emil, and it turned into our first big argument about the wedding. He was caught between keeping the peace with his mom and respecting what we wanted for our own day. It got heated, and we ended up going to bed without really solving anything. A few days later, Emil's dad stepped in, trying to play the mediator. He sat us down and talked about how important it is to keep the family united, especially during special events like weddings. I could tell he was just trying to help, but it felt like more pressure to give in to what his mom wanted. It wasn't about a wedding anymore. It was about making sure no one's feelings got hurt, except maybe mine. That's when I reached out to my best friend. He's always been my go-to for advice, and he didn't hold back. He told me I needed to stand my ground before this whole thing spiraled out of control. "It's your wedding too," he said. "Don't let her take over." His words made a lot of sense, but it was easier said than done, especially with Emil being caught in the middle. The situation took a turn when Emil's mom hit us with an ultimatum. She said that if we didn't include the people on her list, she wouldn't pay for the venue. It felt like a power play, and I was over it. I told Emil we should just forget about the money and go back to our original plan, the simple, intimate wedding we both wanted. Emil didn't know what to say. He was torn between supporting me and not wanting to disappoint his mom. It was like he was stuck between two worlds, and I could see the strain it was putting on him. The stress was starting to get to me. I didn't know how to deal with all of it, so I decided to post about our situation on Reddit. I figured if I laid it all out there, maybe people could give me some perspective or at least tell me I wasn't being completely unreasonable. I didn't expect it to get much attention, but I just needed to vent. That's pretty much where things are right now. We're still trying to figure out what to do, and I'm hoping Emil can see why this is such a big deal for me, but honestly, I'm feeling pretty stuck. It's like every time I think we're getting closer to a solution, something else gets in the way. And with the wedding date creeping closer, I know we can't keep putting this off. After I posted our situation on Reddit, it blew up way more than I expected. People from all over weighed in, offering their opinions and advice. Most of them sided with me, saying I wasn't being unreasonable for wanting to keep our wedding how we originally planned. They told me to hold my ground, not to let anyone take control of our big day. It felt like the internet had my back, even if real life felt a lot messier. But things got more complicated when my post found its way back to Emil's mom. I'm not sure how it happened, but I suspect one of her friends or a relative saw it and connected the dots. After the Reddit post reached Emil's mother, everything fell apart quickly. The phone call came late at night, and his voice was heavy with exhaustion. "She's furious," he said. His mother had read every word, and the situation exploded within the family. She felt humiliated, as if her generosity and intentions had been unfairly exposed. But what hurt her the most was that Emil hadn't fully taken her side, leaving her even more resentful and making him feel like he'd failed as a son. The atmosphere between us became suffocating. Emil was torn, growing more distant, trying to balance his mother's expectations with ours. I saw the confusion in his eyes and the hesitation in his voice whenever he talked about the wedding. He was trying to please everyone, but in the process, he was losing himself, and inevitably losing me too. As much as I tried to stay calm, The situation was draining me. What should have been a special moment had turned into a silent war of wills. Then, one Saturday morning, Emil's mother showed up at our place without warning. Impeccably dressed, with a rigid posture, she walked in as if she owned the place. She sat on the couch and immediately began talking about how disappointed she was with everything. She didn't hold back, criticizing me for making a family matter public. Each word felt like a stab, and Emil sat silently beside her, as if he weren't even there. "You're ruining everything," she said coldly, locking eyes with me, waiting for me to back down. Anger boiled inside me, but I held it in. I wanted to scream that this wedding was supposed to be about me and Emil, not about her. But instead, I stayed quiet, looking at Emil, silently begging him to stand up for me. He just lowered his head, unable to choose a side. In that moment, I knew something had irreversibly changed. I was on my own in this fight. After she left, the silence in the apartment was unbearable. I asked Emil directly if he really wanted to marry me or if he was just going along with it out of inertia. He couldn't answer. He just stood there looking lost. That was the final blow. I got up, went to the bedroom, and started packing my things. I couldn't stay in this situation any longer, fighting a battle I shouldn't have to fight. As I packed, Emil finally tried to say something. "Please don't do this. We'll figure it out." But his voice was weak, as if even he didn't believe what he was saying. I paused for a moment, looking at him, and saw a man trapped between pleasing his mother and living his own life. But he didn't move. He didn't do anything to stop me from leaving, and that was all the confirmation I needed. I zipped up my bag, grabbed my keys, and walked out without saying another word. The sound of the door closing was both a relief and a heartbreak. I knew that from this moment on, there was no turning back. I called my best friend and told him what had happened. He listened quietly and then, with all the calm in the world, said, "You did the right thing. No one deserves to start their life like that." In the following days, I received a few messages from Emil trying to talk, but I had already reached my breaking point. I deleted every message without replying. It didn't take long before I heard that his mother was spreading the story to the family, painting me as ungrateful and irresponsible for walking away from the wedding. But I didn't care. For the first time in months, I felt free. I started focusing on myself again. I picked up old hobbies, spent more time with friends, and slowly began to find myself. It wasn't easy, but it was liberating. Emil and I never spoke again. I heard from mutual friends that he eventually grew even more distant from his mother after I left, but by then it no longer mattered. My story with him was over. What was supposed to be the start of a new life together became the opportunity for me to rediscover myself. Maybe one day Emil will realize what he lost, but by then, I'll be far too gone to care. In the months that followed, the weight of the breakup slowly gave way to a new sense of determination. I wasn't going to let that situation break me. More than that, I decided that if they thought they could walk over me and come out unscathed, they were deeply mistaken. The wound was still open, and the only way forward was through closure, a kind of closure that left no room for regrets. I started by reorganizing my life. I moved to a new city, found a new job, and gradually rebuilt my independence. At the same time, I kept quiet tabs on Emil and his family through mutual friends and social media. It didn't take long to hear that his mother was still spreading twisted stories about me, painting me as ungrateful and unstable, blaming me for ruining her son's relationship. Little did she know, the game was far from over. Then I heard a rumor. Emil was engaged to another woman named Sophie. They had met only a few months after I left. The news didn't hurt me as much as it motivated me. It was the spark I needed to carry out my plan for revenge. Sophie was young and insecure, clearly unaware of what she was walking into. And me? I had the information and the drive to turn their relationship into a disaster before it even began. I started small, sending Sophie anonymous messages, warning her to be cautious of her future mother-in-law. I was patient, planting little seeds of doubt over time. Stories about how Emil's mother had tried to control our wedding and how she was already overstepping with Sophie's plans. It worked. Sophie began confronting Emil, and their argument started. They were subtle at first, just small disagreements, but I knew how to bide my time. Meanwhile, I created fake profiles to connect with Sophie's friends and colleagues, slowly leaking unsettling details about Emil's past. I revealed how he never stood up for me, how he let his mother meddle in every important decision. Each piece of information was a quiet ticking bomb, waiting for the perfect moment to explode. And then it did. As the wedding preparations reached their peak, Sophie started seeing the truth. The helpful mother-in-law she thought she had was now trying to control everything. Her arguments with Emil intensified until, 1 week before the wedding, something happened that I hadn't expected. Sophie reached out to me directly. I got a message from her saying she needed to know the truth about Emil and what had happened between us. This was the final blow I had been waiting for. I agreed to meet with Sophie, not because I wanted anything from her, but because it was my chance to end this story on my terms. When we met, Sophie looked nervous, as if she already knew what I was going to say. I held nothing back. I told her everything, every manipulation from Emil's mother, every moment he stood by in silence when I needed him the most. I explained that she was on the verge of living the same nightmare I had gone through. She listened in silence, and when I finished, I could see in her eyes that something had shifted. 3 days later, I heard the wedding was off. There wasn't a formal announcement, but the news spread quickly through Emil's social circles. He tried to contact me one last time, but I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. Sophie moved on, and I knew she had escaped what could have been a lifetime of control and manipulation. As for Emil and his mother, I heard things between them deteriorated quickly. His mother never forgave him for losing 2 fiancés in a row, and he ended up cutting ties with her. It was ironic, in a way. The woman who had fought so hard to control him now found herself alone, and the son she tried so desperately to protect had become a stranger to her. For me, it was the closure I needed. It wasn't about lost love or lingering anger anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and showing that no one walks over me without consequences. Today, I look back without regret, not because of the revenge itself, but because I closed that chapter once and for all. And the best part? Knowing that while they're trapped in their regrets and broken relationships, I'm free, ready to live life on my own terms. In the months that followed the cancellation of Sophie and Emil's wedding, I finally felt like I was rebuilding my life. The sense of freedom was like a breath of fresh air. The pain and frustration that once consumed me were now replaced by a quiet determination. I knew that not only had I escaped a toxic relationship, but I was also ready to give myself the chance to thrive. If life had given me a blank page, I was going to write a whole new story on it. With more time and energy, I decided to invest in an old dream, starting my own event planning business. I had always had a natural talent for organizing and creating unique experiences, and ironically, the chaos of my canceled wedding gave me the push I needed to pursue that career. I started small, organizing events for friends and colleagues, and soon my reputation began to grow. At first, it was tough. I had to learn about management, marketing, and finances from scratch, but I had never been more motivated. Every contract I secured felt like a personal victory, proof that I could build something on my own, without relying on anyone. Within months, the business began to thrive. Referrals started pouring in, and suddenly my calendar was packed with weddings, parties, and corporate events. Each success was a reminder that I had made the right choice by walking away from Emil and his family. Meanwhile, I heard from mutual friends that things weren't going well for Emil and his mother. Their relationship had never recovered. Sophie had moved on, and from what I gathered, she was much better off without him. His mother, once a powerful and controlling figure, was now increasingly isolated. It seemed that all the control she tried to exert over her son's life had only succeeded in driving him further away. Then, something unexpected happened. One of my clients turned out to be a friend of Sophie's. During a meeting to discuss her event, I casually mentioned that I knew Emil. Her reaction was one of surprise, but instead of awkwardness, she smiled and said, "You dodged a bullet." And so did I. We laughed together, and in that moment, I felt a deep sense of peace, as if all the pain and frustration from the past were finally behind me. Over time, my business grew so much that I started hiring staff. What began as a small personal project evolved into a thriving franchise. I opened offices in multiple cities, and my name became a go-to in the event planning industry. I was living a life I never imagined, with financial independence and a strong network of friends and colleagues who genuinely supported me. Then one day, I received an unexpected email. It was from Emil. He apologized for everything and asked to meet and talk. I deleted the email without responding. There was nothing left to say. I had moved on, and the life I built was proof that I didn't need any explanation or apology from him. As the years went by, I started giving talks on overcoming adversity and entrepreneurship. People loved hearing how a tough situation could become the starting point for something incredible. I didn't hide my past. Instead, I turned it into a powerful lesson about the importance of prioritizing yourself and never settling for less than you deserve. Today, when I look back, I see that everything happened exactly as it should have. Not only did I escape a life that would have suffocated me, but I also built something extraordinary from the wreckage. Emil and his mother? They became nothing more than a footnote in the story of my life. While they were stuck in a cycle of regrets and poor choices, I was living fully, following my dreams and setting my own rules. And the best part? Knowing that every one of my achievements is proof that the best revenge is success.
I cheated after 17 years of marriage. Now he won't talk to me unless the kids are in the room. I'm Courtney, 42, and I totally didn't see my life turning into the soap opera. Everyone always said Brandon and I were the perfect couples, 17 years of marriage, 2 beautiful daughters, and a house in a neighborhood where people actually want to live. We were that couple. The one everyone looked at and thought, relationship goals. Brandon was always the guy who remembered anniversaries without phone reminders. He'd bring home my favorite takeout when I had a rough day at work. When Haley and Julia were little, he'd take them for daddy days, so I could have time to myself. He was the husband who actually listened when I complained about drama at work, who rubbed my feet after I wore those killer heels I loved even though they murdered my arches. For our 15th anniversary, he planned this whole weekend getaway with all my favorite things. Between us, my friends were so jealous they could barely hide it. We had the matching views in the driveway, the family photos on the walls, the inside jokes no one else understood. From the outside, we were perfect. The other couples would ask for advice. How do you two still look at each other like that after all these years? They'd ask at neighborhood cookouts. And I'd smile that knowing smile while Brandon's arms slipped around my waist. When other wives complained about their husbands leaving dirty socks on the floor or forgetting important dates, I'd nod sympathetically while secretly feeling superior. Brandon wasn't like other husbands. He was attentive, thoughtful, exactly what I'd always wanted. At least, that's what I thought I wanted. But somewhere around year 15, I started feeling restless. The predictability that once felt secure started feeling stifling. I knew exactly what Brandon would say before he said it. I could anticipate his every move, his every thought. Date nights became just another routine, different restaurant, same conversation. The sex was like a choreographed dance we'd performed 1,000 times. It wasn't bad, just gnome, too gnome. I started noticing things that annoyed me, the way he cleared his throat before speaking, how he always checked the doors were locked 3 times before bed, his predictable reactions to everything. God, the predictability was suffocating me. I'd look at him across the dinner table, talking about his day at work, and think, is this really it? Is this all there is for the next 30 years? I never said anything, though. What kind of ungrateful witch complains about a husband who's actually nice? Instead, I smiled and nodded and played my part as the happily married wife, while feeling like I was slowly disappearing. I started spending more time at work, volunteering for projects that kept me and away from home. I told myself I was advancing my career, but really, I was just avoiding the crushing sameness of my perfect life. The girls were teenagers by then. Haley was 16 and Julia 14, both lost in their own worlds of friends and activities and social media drama. They needed me less, and that left more time for me to dwell on my dissatisfaction. I look at younger women at work, single and carefree, and feel a twinge of something like envy. I started paying more attention to my appearance, updating my wardrobe, getting a new haircut that made me look younger. Brandon noticed, of course. He complimented me, seemed pleased. "You look amazing, babe," he'd say. And I'd feel a moment of warmth before the restlessness crept back in. I wanted more reaction, more passion, more something. I started wondering if anyone else would look at me and feel that spark I was missing. And then Eric started at the office. Eric wasn't particularly handsome or charming at first glance. He wasn't even my type, really, but he looked at me like he actually saw me. Not just Courtney the wife, Courtney the mom, but Courtney the woman. When we were assigned to the same project, I found myself lingering after meetings, making excuses to collaborate. We started getting coffee together, then lunch. Just colleagues, I told myself. Just friends. Until we weren't just friends anymore. The first time was after a late night at the office. Everyone else had gone home. We were reviewing some numbers that absolutely had to be perfect for the next day's presentation. He reached for the same file I did. Our hands touched, and suddenly, 17 years of marriage vaporized in the heat of something new, something forbidden. I told myself it was just a mistake, a moment of weakness. But then it happened again, and again. I became someone I didn't recognize sneaking around, making up excuses to work late, deleting texts, creating elaborate lies. The affair with Eric lasted 6 months before Brandon found out. 6 months of living a double life, feeling more alive than I had in years while simultaneously carrying the weight of betrayal. I justified it in 1,000 ways. Brandon had grown complacent. We'd lost our spark. I deserved to feel desired. Eric understood me in ways Brandon never had. The mental gymnastics I performed to make myself the victim, instead of the villain, were truly Olympic level. Looking back, I see the signs Eric wasn't actually interested in me as a person. He was younger, ambitious, probably saw sleeping with me as a way to advance. But in the moment, the attention was intoxicating. Every compliment, every stolen kiss in the supply closet, every secret hotel meeting felt like oxygen after years of slowly suffocating. I convinced myself I was falling in love with him. Maybe I even believed it. I got sloppy, though, started taking risks. One night, I left my phone unlocked while showering, and Brandon saw a text from Eric that couldn't be misinterpreted. Still thinking about last night. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Not exactly subtle. When I got out of the shower, Brandon was sitting on the edge of the bed, my phone in his hand, looking like someone had just told him his entire family had died. I'll never forget his expression. A mixture of shock, pain, and worst of all, complete lack of surprise. Like some part of him had been waiting for me to hurt him. How long? He asked, his voice so flat it scared me more than if he'd been screaming. I tried to lie at first, claimed it was nothing, just flirty texts, a stupid crush. But Brandon just stared at me with those devastated eyes until the truth spilled out. Not all of it. I minimized where I could, made it sound more like an emotional affair than a physical one, tried to paint myself as confused rather than calculating. But enough truth came out that night to shatter everything we'd built. I thought Brandon would yell, break things, storm out. That's what happens in movies, right? Instead, he just sat there, nodding slightly as if I was confirming something he'd suspected all along. When I finished talking, he stood up, walked to the guest room, and closed the door. The quiet was worse than any screaming could have been. The next day, everything imploded at work, too. Brandon had apparently spent the night looking through all my messages and emails. He'd forwarded the most damning ones to himself and then contacted our company's HR department. By noon, both Eric and I had been called in and fired for violating the company's policy on workplace relationships. Eric wouldn't even look at me as we cleared out our desks, suddenly strangers again. That night, I tried to talk to Brandon, cried, begged, promised it would never happen again. He just watched me perform my remorse with empty eyes before saying, "The girls can't know about this. We'll figure out what to do. But they can't know their mother is a cheater." The word, cheater, hit like a slap. I wanted to argue, to explain that it was more complicated than that our marriage had problems before Eric. But one look at Brandon's face and I knew there was no point. In his mind, there was before I cheated and after, with nothing in between that mattered. For weeks after, I tried everything to make things right. I got a new job quickly to show I was being responsible. I started therapy, hoping he'd see I was working on myself. I left little notes around the house like I used to do when we were first married. I tried initiating sex. God, that was a disaster. He literally turned his back on me and walked out of the room. The only time Brandon would engage with me at all was when Haley or Julia was in the room. Then, suddenly, he'd transform into a reasonable facsimile of his self-pleasant, conversational, even occasionally smiling. Our daughters had no idea anything was wrong. That's how good his act was. But the second they left, it was like a switch flipped and I became invisible again. About 2 months in, I got desperate. I'd always known Brandon had fantasies he'd never fully expressed. So one night, after the girls were asleep, I suggested maybe we should try an open marriage, just for him. I told him I'd understand if he wanted to see other women, that maybe it would help him get past what I'd done. I even offered to arrange it. God. I cringe remembering this, but I actually suggested I could find women for him. That maybe we could even try a threesome if that would make him happy. I thought I was being generous, offering him the same freedom I'd taken. Instead, he looked at me with pure disgust. Is that really what you think this is about? That I'm jealous? That I just want permission to cheat too? His voice was so cold. I don't want an open marriage. I don't want other women. I wanted a wife who respected our vows. Then he delivered the ultimatum. If you ever mention anything like this again. Open marriages, threesomes, any of it. I'll file for divorce immediately, no matter what it costs me. He wasn't bluffing. I could see it in his eyes. That's when I realized how badly I'd misjudged not just the situation, but who Brandon was as a person. I'd projected my own dissatisfaction onto him, assumed his needs were as shallow as mine had become. I tried bringing up couples therapy, and to my surprise, Brandon agreed. But the therapist's office was just another stage for our performance. Brandon would answer questions politely, go through the exercises, even complete the homework. But there was nothing behind it. No real desire to reconnect, just mechanical compliance. After sessions, he'd go right back to his silent treatment at home. Months passed like this. I lost weight, couldn't sleep, developed anxiety that made my chest feel tight constantly. Meanwhile, Brandon seemed to be doing fine. He got a promotion at work, started going to the gym regularly, took the girls on weekend trips to give me space. He'd say in front of them as if he was being considerate instead of avoiding me. I found myself frantically checking his phone when he wasn't looking, convinced he must be having an affair of his own. But there was nothing. No suspicious texts, no unexplained absences. It was almost disappointing, having no ammunition to use against him. Nothing to make us even. The worst part was watching him with Haley and Julia. He was still the same loving father he'd always been, helping with homework, attending school events, making pancakes on Sunday mornings. They adored him, completely unaware that when they weren't looking, their father couldn't stand to be in the same room as their mother. Why are you putting so much effort into pretending? I finally asked him one night after the girls went to bed, why not just tell them the truth and leave if you hate me so much? Brandon looked at me for a long moment before answering. Because, unlike you, I don't make choices based solely on what I want in the moment. Our daughters deserve an intact home, until they're ready to leave it. After that, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. It's been almost 2 years since D, as they call it on the infidelity support forums, I've started browsing in my loneliness. 2 years of living with a man who's physically present, but emotionally gone. 2 years of maintaining our perfect couple facade for the neighbors, for our families, for our daughters. Healy's going to college next year. Julia will follow 2 years after that. The clock is ticking on whatever remains of my marriage, and I know it. I've tried everything: apologies, seduction, guilt, anger, indifference. Nothing penetrates the wall Brandon has built between us. Sometimes I catch him looking at me when he thinks I won't notice. There's no hate in his eyes anymore, which is almost worse. Just nothing. Complete indifference. Like I'm a stranger he's sharing space with temporarily. The husband who used to notice every new outfit, every haircut, now looks through me as if I'm not even there. Last week, I found paperwork in his desk drawer, financial planning documents, information about apartments in the city near his office, a consultation received from a divorce attorney dated just a few weeks after he discovered the affair. He's been planning his exit for almost 2 years, just waiting for the right moment. And I realized that, while I've been desperately trying to save something that's already dead, Brandon has been patiently building his escape route. The most painful part is that I still love him. Or at least I love the man he was, the life we had. I miss the comfort of his arms around me at night, the sound of his laugh, the way he used to look at me like I was his whole world. I threw it all away for what? A few months of excitement with a man who didn't even bother to contact me after we were fired last night. Brandon actually spoke to me directly for the first time in weeks. I'm taking Julia shopping for a homecoming dress tomorrow, he said, his tone perfectly neutral, like he was talking to a casual acquaintance. She wants both of us there. Can you make it? Of course, I said, pathetically grateful for this crumb of normal interaction. I wouldn't miss it. He nodded and turned to leave the room. Brandon, I called after him, my voice catching. Will it ever get better? Will you ever forgive me? He paused in the doorway, his back still to me. For a moment, I thought he might not answer. I've already forgiven you, Courtney. he said finally, his voice soft but clear. I had to, for my own peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean staying. He left without looking back, leaving me alone with the truth I've been avoiding. My marriage is over. It's been over since the moment I decided my vows were less important than my desires. In 3 months, Haley graduates. In 5, she leaves for college. And then the countdown truly begins. I see my future stretching out before me: divorce papers, selling our house, dividing our possessions, watching Brandon start a new life without me, while I'm left with nothing but regret and memories of what we once had. Sometimes I fantasize about going back in time, stopping myself from sending that first 40 texts to Eric, from staying late at the office that night, from crossing lines that can never be uncrossed. But time only moves forward, and actions have consequences. Mine certainly did. The night Brandon found those texts, he asked me a question I couldn't answer then. Was it worth it? 2 years later, as I lie alone in our king-sized bed while he sleeps in the guest room, I finally have my answer. Nothing could be worth this hollowness, this slow-motion collapse of everything I once held dear. I made my choice, and now I'm living with it. Every day, I watch my husband pretend to still be my husband while planning his escape. Every night, I go to sleep knowing I destroyed something precious that can never be rebuilt. And the worst part? I have no one to blame but myself, though God knows I've tried to distribute that blame elsewhere: to Brandon for being too predictable, to Eric for pursuing me, to my job for the stressful environment that pushed me toward bad decisions. The truth is simpler and harder to face. I was selfish. I wanted excitement without consequences. I thought I could have everything: the stability of my marriage and the thrill of an affair. Instead, I ended up with nothing but a countdown to the day Brandon finally walks away for good. 3 months until graduation. 5 months until Haley leaves for college. 24 months until Julia follows. And then I'll truly understand the cost of what I've done, when the facade finally falls away and I'm left standing in the ruins of the life I destroyed. I never thought it would actually happen. Not really. Even with all the signs, part of me believed Brandon would forgive me eventually. Truly forgive me. That somehow we'd find our way back to each other. But last week, Haley graduated. We sat side by side in the audience, clapping and cheering as she walked across the stage in her cap and gown. Brandon's parents were there, my parents too. All of us playing our parts in this happy family parade. After the ceremony, as we posed for pictures, Brandon's arm around my shoulder felt like a stranger's. His smile never reached his eyes when he looked at me, though it was genuine enough when he hugged Haley. We hosted a small party at the house, our last event as a complete family unit, though no one else knew that. That night, after everyone left and the girls went to bed, Brandon handed me an envelope. Inside were divorce papers, already filled out, just waiting for my signature. I've been more than fair with the financial arrangements, he said, his voice matter-of-fact like we were discussing a business transaction. You can keep the house until Julia graduates if you want, or we can sell it and split the proceeds. I've already found an apartment downtown. I stared at him, the reality finally sinking in. You're really doing this? After all this time, you're still leaving. I told you I would, he replied. No anger in his voice, just certainty. I stayed for the girls. Haley's an adult now. Julia will understand. You don't have to do this, I whispered, tears welling up. We can still work it out. People recover from affairs all the time. Brandon looked at me with something almost like pity. This isn't about the affair anymore, Courtney. It's about the fact that I don't trust you. I don't even know you. The woman I married wouldn't have done what you did, and she certainly wouldn't have suggested I sleep with other women to make things even. This marriage has been over for 2 years. I've just been waiting for the right time to make it official. He moved out the next day, while Julia was at a friend's house, took only what he needed for his new apartment, said we could figure out the rest later. When Julia came home and found out, she was devastated. Blamed me immediately, somehow knowing instinctively that whatever had happened was my fault. Brandon never told her about the affair, kept his promise on that. But she's 16, not stupid. She's barely spoken to me since. Within weeks, the news of our separation spread through our social circle. I tried to control the narrative, suggesting we'd just grown apart. But then came the final pot. Brandon started dating. Not casually, not playing the field like I expected, but seriously dating one woman, someone from his office, I later found out. Rebecca. Even her name sounds wholesome and trustworthy. The first time I saw them together was at a restaurant downtown. I was having lunch with a friend when they walked in. Hand in hand, Brandon looked happy, genuinely happy, in a way I hadn't seen in years. My friend noticed them too, then glanced at me with pity. "Did you know?" she asked. I shook my head, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. After that, the story began to shift. People stopped inviting me to gatherings where Brandon would be present. Friends we'd had for years slowly drifted toward him. Even my own parents, who'd initially been supportive, started making comments about second chances, and how Brandon seems to be doing well after meeting Rebecca at Julia's tennis match. 8 months after moving out, Brandon proposed to Rebecca. Julia told me, her voice a mix of excitement and accusation. "Dave's getting married again. Rebecca's really nice. She actually listens when I talk." The divorce was finalized last month. Brandon and Rebecca are getting married in the spring. Julia has asked to live with them after the wedding. Haley calls from college, but visits her father's apartment when she's home, only stopping by the house out of obligation. The beautiful home that was once filled with love now feels like an empty museum of a life that no longer exists. I finally got the answers to questions I was too afraid to ask before. Brandon hadn't been secretly planning his exit from the beginning. He genuinely tried to forgive me. It was my behavior afterward that killed any chance of reconciliation, the manipulation, the suggestions of an open marriage, the refusal to take full responsibility. As he put it in our last real conversation, "You weren't sorry you cheated. You were sorry you got caught." He was right. I wasn't truly remorseful. Not at first. I was just desperate to avoid consequences, to keep my comfortable life intact. By the time I understood what I'd really lost, it was far too late. I ran into Eric last week, the first time since we were both fired. He's married now, too, to someone younger. Barely acknowledged me beyond a nod. The passionate affair that I destroyed my family for wasn't even memorable enough for him to feel awkward seeing me again. Just another conquest in his rearview mirror. So here I am, alone in a house too big for one person, with photos I can't bear to look at, but can't bring myself to take down. The divorce settlement was generous. Brandon always was a better person than me. But money doesn't keep you warm at night. It doesn't call to check if you're okay, doesn't remember your favorite ice cream, doesn't hold your hand through good news and bad. I thought the worst consequence of my affair would be Brandon's anger. I was wrong. His indifference was worse than his anger. And now this new reality, watching him build a happy life with someone else while mine crumbles. This is the true punishment. Not because he intended it that way, but because it's the natural result of the choices I made. Sometimes, on my darkest nights, I take out my phone and hover over Brandon's number, composing texts I never send. What would I even say? That I'm sorry? He's heard that 1,000 times. That I miss him. That would only burden him with guilt he doesn't deserve. That I still love him. That stopped being relevant the moment I betrayed him. So instead, I live with my regrets. I smile through Julia's increasingly rare visits. I send Haley care packages at college. I go to work, come home, eat dinner alone, and wonder how I could have been so blind, so selfish, so sure that the grass was greener somewhere else when I already had everything that mattered. Brandon asked me once if it was worth it. The answer haunts me every single day. Nothing was worth this. Nothing ever could be.